So, I've got a problem. You might have heard that forming good habits and immersing yourself in the language are the key to learning it, and the internet is full of habits gurus saying they are the key to success. Are you struggling to balance work with learning a language? Well, I used to listen to Spanish podcasts during my commute. It was nearly 2 hours of Spanish every day, so that, with some consistency, got me to the point where I could just listen to Spanish podcasts made for native speakers. But then I did something stupid. I quit my job and I started working from home. So my new commute is it's about 5 seconds and I sit on the floor now. Not only did I lose that commuting time, but now being self-employed, I feel guilty spending time on anything that's not work. Spanish isn't as high up on my to-do list as it should be. If I don't make it a priority, I could risk stagnating or even forgetting some of my Spanish. Something needs to change. So thinking back to when I first started learning Spanish, I logged my hours of listening and reading. It motivated me to do more and it got me to a conversation level without any studying. So here's the plan. For the next 30 days, I'll be using this notebook to get myself back on track. I'll list my daily tasks and always include 1 hour of reading Spanish. So reading helps with vocabulary and seeing words in context. And by writing the tasks down, I have a concrete goal to tick off each day. That won't be the only thing I'll do. I'll still be watching my favorite Spanish creators on YouTube and listening to podcasts that I do just as a matter of course at this stage. But here's the thing, without making it the priority every day, it's easy for your language learning to get forgotten amongst work and other responsibilities. I'm also curious to learn about habits and how we can make them stick for good. Before that though, Storylearning have got a summer sale at the minute, so they've got 15 different languages which are all half price. It's possibly one of the best times of the year to get a deal from them. It's where I started Spanish, and if you're interested, I'll put a link down in the description. But first, we need to talk about rats and how they can help you learn a language. So our current thinking about habits is linked to behaviorism. This has its roots with B.F. Skinner. Building on the work of Edward Thorndike, Skinner further developed the idea of operant conditioning, which is where the rats come in. So Skinner created the imaginatively named Skinner box, in which he would study the behaviours of rats. For example, if you put a hungry rat in a box and it accidentally presses a lever which releases food, it gets positive reinforcement and learns that pushing the lever is a good thing. Through various experiments, Skinner looked at the effect of positive reward and punishments on behaviour, which relates to how we form habits. Behaviourism was also a big factor in how people thought about learning languages for a while too. Remember the idea of grammar drills? You're trying to condition yourself to use the correct form of the language. Fortunately for all of us, that's now a bit dated. Although little boxes with rats in might seem old-fashioned, Skinner's work is still relevant as a way to think about habits. Modern neuroscience also adds other factors like the pleasure hormone dopamine, which reinforces behaviours. Charles Duhigg further developed thinking on habits in his book The Power of Habit. So Duhigg mentions the habit loop, which is cue, routine, reward. The cue is what initiates the habit, so that can be an external event, the time of day or anything else. The routine is the behaviour itself, so this is the new habit that we're trying to create, and the reward is the benefit you get from it. So I get the satisfaction of ticking reading off my list, for example. One thing Duhigg mentions which really resonated with me is the idea of keystone habits. Basically, certain habits can create a chain reaction of sorts where they influence other positive changes. For example, regular exercise might lead to you eating better, getting better sleep, and feeling more productive, or even feeling happier in general. It's like a small win that motivates you to keep going. And that certainly makes sense when I think about trying to track my hours before. I was looking for any and every opportunity to get exposed to Spanish and make it the priority every day. And it's worth mentioning that the cue, routine, reward of the habit loop works not only for good habits that we want to form, but also the bad ones that we can create without trying. So cue, you see your phone. Routine, you pick it up and start scrolling. Reward, sweet, sweet dopamine. Okay, so it is the end of the first week and it's been going well. I'm lucky in that my dog Ralph keeps waking me up at 6 a.m. every day to say hello. But on those days, I've just picked up my iPad straight away, just smashed out an hour of reading before I get up, which is awesome. On other days, I've done my hour of reading, but I've done it in like a couple of sittings throughout the day. So I've still been getting it done though, which I guess is the main thing. I have found it really useful to think about crafting my environment. So my iPad has been living on my bedside table and I've been keeping it charged. So my habit when I wake up, instead of rolling over and just scrolling on my phone, is to try and pick up my iPad and then start reading straight away. For whatever reason, I just don't associate my iPad with social media, so I basically only read on it. And I've actually left my phone downstairs for a couple of nights as well. Realistically, I don't need my phone in my bedroom. So it is a strong start so far. I also noticed that because I'm paying more attention to getting exposure to Spanish, there are times that I might click on something on, say, YouTube or like read a news article in English. I'm deliberately searching for the same thing, but in Spanish. I get to reward my desire to watch whatever the thing was, but I just have to add like an extra step in the middle of searching for it in Spanish before I get the final reward. So I guess that is the effect of the keystone habit that Duhigg talks about. In 2010, a study by Philippa Lally and her team at UCL found it takes on average 66 days to form a new habit, although it can range from 18 to 254 based on how complicated it is, as well as personal differences. So whilst 66 days might seem long, the good news is that missing a day doesn't derail the process. The key takeaway is that consistency is crucial. Regularly performing the habit in the same context increases the likelihood of it becoming automatic. Establishing a clear trigger for the behavior is essential. Over time, you start to do it without thinking. Creating an environment without bad cues will help you here. For example, putting your phone somewhere else when you're in the period of time that you might have dedicated to learning the language each day. Update on how it's going. So I find I have more energy in the mornings and then it slowly drops throughout the day. I'm very much a lark as opposed to an owl. I'm most productive as soon as I wake up, and because I do need to get some work done, I've been pushing my reading to a little bit later in the day. Though if I leave it too late, I just want to sleep. And the prospect of reading for an hour just seems pretty daunting. So if you're thinking about your own learning, make sure it's going to happen at a time when you're going to have a bit more energy. Sometimes it does feel like getting a good night's sleep might actually be better for my learning the next day. Also, sometimes I listen to podcasts or audiobooks when I'm walking the dog each day, but I'm trying to train him a little bit better, which means my focus is on him and our interaction rather than the Spanish. I'm fully aware that it's slightly less time I have with the language, but I'm okay with it taking a few months longer to get better if I'm still improving and I do get to have some quality time with my dog. One thing that is really worth mentioning if you're thinking about your own language learning is habit stacking. So James Clear mentions this a lot in his book, Atomic Habits. Habit stacking is basically when you use an existing habit that you do already or something that you have to do, and then associate or link that with a new habit that you want to create. Like I always have a morning coffee. So for the 15 minutes that I'm having my coffee each day, I'll put on a podcast in the language I want to learn. Across the month, that's an extra 7.5 hours, and across the year, that's an extra over 90 hours. If you have a few points like this throughout the day, the hours really will add up. So whilst I don't have a commute now, I can put on YouTube or an audiobook whilst I'm having my lunch. I know everybody doesn't have this luxury, but we've all got to work with what we've got, right? Some days it might be that I'll be able to make a quick sandwich and just have a cheeky italki lesson. There isn't a language schedule that will work for everybody, so you have to find a way that will work for you. The key thing is that you do need to make time for language learning, but you also don't have to cancel your life. Also, for those of you who feel that you've made a bit of progress, try non-fiction audiobooks. Fiction can often be a lot harder with all of the descriptive words, but some non-fiction might actually be a bit more accessible. So last year I listened to Atomic Habits in Spanish, and it was actually really cool when I realized I just understood it. If you're not there yet, don't worry, keep going and you'll be there before long. So I will be honest, when I've had a lot on some days, I haven't quite got the full hour of reading in, although I've definitely read every day. I write down my tasks to do each morning, and it means that if I haven't already read at that stage, it's already at the forefront of my mind. I have to say, I think it's easier to wake up and just get the hour done in one block than it is to try and make time for it later, especially when it gets late and I realize I've still got to do an hour of reading. I've also actually started reading a book on paper, which has been exciting. It's not exactly highbrow fiction, but I think you're better off going with stuff that you find genuinely interesting rather than forcing yourself through stuff that's boring. So it's the end of the 30 days and it has been really interesting. Now, look, I know it's just a little black book and it is nothing earth-shattering, but it certainly has helped me feel a bit more intentional about what I'm doing with my time. And let's be honest, unless you make time for something, it's likely that you might not find any. by doing this, it's meant that I'm actually looking to commit to my learning each day, and I think it's helped me stay consistent. So whether you do something analog like this, or use a time tracker or a habit tracker online or on your phone, it can be that simple task that is that keystone habit for other changes. This actually helped me to get into better habits in general. So I've been meditating on occasion again, simply because I wrote it down on my list and then I made time for it in the day. Now, I'm not a huge one for online productivity, and I think it can be quite toxic actually, but I do think there's an interesting question we can ask ourselves, which is, what is it that you want to spend your time doing? Thanks for watching.